Welcome everyone to today's RVATECH Tech It Yourself webinar. We are here on Tech Builder Thursday. Glad to have everyone on the call. Really excited today that we've got an entire panel joining us from around the state this time. So branching outside of the city, and hopefully we get some greater perspective today on how the current situation is being handled by the technology sector across the state. For those who haven't joined us on one of these webinars before, just a couple of housekeeping items. We are going to pull everyone in to the panelist side so you can see who's joining us. If you could please stay muted for the time being, that'd be great. We will do some structured discussion for the first 20 to 30 minutes here, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So if you have a question or a comment, anything you want to say, there's the Q&A box as well as the chat box. Either of them work. And once we get to that point, we'd love for you to turn on your microphone and your camera and kind of join the conversation in a live format if you're willing. So with that, again, I want to thank our panelists, Dan Bell, Mary Miller, and Tracey Greene for joining us today. Really want to start off with doing a little bit of a round robin intro in terms of who each of you are and kind of maybe some description about your council and some things that you all really prioritize in your areas. So maybe Tracey, if we could start with you and tell us about Charlottesville.
Sure. So the Charlottesville Business Innovation Council is the name of our local tech council. It used to be called the Virginia Piedmont Technology Council years and years ago, but we merged with another nonprofit. We educate, celebrate, and advocate on behalf of the technology community, as do all of the other tech councils. We have some special differentiating programs and initiatives we undertake here in Charlottesville. In addition to all the same kinds of events that we all do with networking and education, we have a special program called our Tech Tour, where annually we take 400 up to 500 middle school and high school students, and we tour them around to technology-based businesses across our region to inspire our next generation and wave of entrepreneurs, founders, and tech enthusiasts. That's one of our tech talent pipeline initiatives. We also have our own version of 1 million cups of coffee we call Charlottesville Entrepreneurs and Espresso, that we do in collaboration with a lot of other nonprofits, including the Community Investment Collaborative and the local SBDC office and the Batten Institute at UVA and some others. And we do that monthly. We have everything that we're doing now networking wise is all going online. So we're doing a virtual meetup. We're using a new technology platform called Kiko. It's new to us anyway, that enables, when we're doing our events, to have breakout rooms that people can go in and out of on their own, which is really unique. So it utilizes Zoom technology like this, but as opposed to us breaking people out into different breakout rooms, they can wander these different rooms on their own. So that's unique. We had a program that we had just launched called CBIC for the Founders right before the pandemic struck. So we were able to have our very first session, fortunately, in person, but now we're converting that and needing to convert that to an online platform. So we're doing pre-recorded webinars, sending it to our participants of the program, which is our cohort, and having them do some homework and read it, and then come back to a live webinar to ask Q&A later. We've also launched a new online platform called CBIC Connect, which is a community engine. We had been thinking about and looking at and vetting different programs and platforms for this, but we put it on an escalated time frame so that we could really push out CARES Act and COVID related content, and people could do asks and offers 24/7 without having to go through the council and without having to wait to go into a newsletter. So we're rushing just like everybody else is. You know, we're all flying the plane and building the engine at the same time. But CBIC has some unique differentiators, and I wanted to share that with all of you and let you know that Charlottesville's doing well. And I'm happy to hear from Dan and Mary.
Cool. Thanks, Tracey. Dan, why don't we move over to you and talk about Hampton Roads?
All right, Dan Bell, Hampton Roads Innovation Collaborative, which is a new DBA, 4-year-old DBA for the Hampton Roads Technology Council, the C6, that was established in the late 90s. And I joined the Tech Council probably, when I was with Canon, so it might have been around 2006 or 7. And what the Tech Council had primarily focused on back in those days was incubation. So they ran the City of Hampton incubator, funded by the City of Hampton. And over time, I think what happened was, and I want to choose my words carefully, incubators became not passe, because they're very, very necessary, but shared workspaces started popping up and things of that nature, and kind of substituting for the quote unquote incubator. So we did not pursue that. We relaunched in 2016, and our focus is on programming to help support technology, local technology companies. And so we've got about 100 members and several large corporate and academia sponsors. So we're doing quite well from that perspective. Our event schedule for over the year is of course changed right now, but we typically do a quarterly critical mass networking session, and of course all those are off the books right now. In spring, we do a tech ramp or some STEM related thing for high school, for middle school, high school, and college engineering programs. And so that too has been canceled. We have an annual tech expo that we do in the fall. That one is still on the books for September. We'll see what happens. We may move it out a little bit to give us some elbow room with respect to kind of more normalized situations with pandemic. We'll just have to wait and see. Other programs that we do are, there's one that's about a year old now that's called Corporate Pillars. And what Corporate Pillars, and we've actually transitioned that name to Regional Pillars. So this is also a quarterly meeting where we have the CIOs attend. And I'm saying most of most of the large organization CIOs, and they actually not just from corporations, they can be from corporations, government, academia. So we actually renamed the program Regional Pillars, and we bring in 6 companies at a time to provide a 20-minute presentation on who they are, what they do, what they offer, what their needs are, their strategic plans, their marketing plans, their sales plans, etc. And it's a live mentoring opportunity right there with respect to CIOs from large organizations. And business has come from that too, obviously business connections. So that's live and working, although we had another one scheduled in April, which had to be canceled for obvious reasons. And so we too are taking that program virtually. And so we have a new program called Virtual Pitch. And that's where organizations, tech companies are providing up to about 15 minutes worth of video presentation. And that can be a live webinar, it can be recorded, it can be a YouTube video, and we provide access to that for everybody, including the large CIOs from the region. So that's what we're all about. Obviously, we're in the same times as everybody else, so trying to figure out how to get the rudder working again back on the boat. But and we are all in that same boat.
Thanks, Dan. Moving over to Roanoke-Blacksburg and not John Phillips, talking with Mary Miller today, representing that area. So Mary, why don't you let us know what's going on down there?
Well, thanks so much. It's really, am I muted? Am I good?
Yep.
You're good.
Okay, good. Okay. It's really great to be with you today. John sends his regrets. He's actually on a radio show that we've started in the region that's becoming quite popular. Every day from 12 to 1, there's tech talks, have your lunch with the RVATECH, and we're bringing to the table every day in a radio format, a talk radio format with issues around the region. And people are really getting engaged with that. And so that's, it's in its second week. We're going to continue with this program through all of COVID-19, and if the population chooses, we'll just continue on with it. So John is on the radio today, and I'm the substitute. I'm Mary Miller. I'm the director of the Regional Accelerator Mentoring Program, and I've been running this program for the last 3 years. Prior to me running this program, I'm a former president of the RVATECH, and I owned and operated a software development company for almost 30 years in the Blacksburg area. As those that are listening know, that our region is heavily weighted with universities, Blacksburg and the Carilion and the medical school, as well as a number of other small small liberal arts schools that are very engaged in what we're doing in our region. Some of the areas that we're really strong in right now is autonomous vehicles, and what's going on with that. We maintain in this region the smart highway. There's a lot of work being done around autonomous and batteries and things like that, as well as the healthcare area. Right at the moment, our healthcare community is working seriously focused on a quick test. And I just heard from the Fralin Biomedical Institute and Carillion, there's a lot of promise there in a really quick COVID-19 test that I think is going to be critical to get not only our region, but all of us back to what could be a new normal. Other things that we have in our region that are kind of strong is software development. That was my background, and my company developed in that area for quite some time. Those of you may know Rackspace. It's a large data storage, started in Blacksburg and is quite large, as well as some of the work that we're doing right now in blockchain technology. So Block 1 is located in our area, and there's quite a bit of energy and employment in the blockchain environment. The programs that are being run, we have almost 240 members across our region. Some of the oldest programs that are traditional, I think, is Tech and Toast. We come together on a regular basis at early hours, and much of a sharing and a social environment. We were talking about when I was running my company many years ago. I was actually at the table at the very first discussion when we might start a technology council. There were 5 of us and a box of coffee. And it wasn't even a box of coffee. It was when you had to get coffee. I don't know. It was somebody brought coffee in a carafe. But so I've looked at what has happened with this kind of communication from the very early days when we thought about the technology community. One of the things that was different for me was that through these social networking, we found our mentors. I am working really hard right now as part of the Regional Accelerator and Mentoring Program is to build a very strong network of mentors that are available throughout our region to companies. And as we look at the situation right now, we'll be moving some of those opportunities online. We hold pitch and polish clinics for startup companies to help find the kind of help they might need to get going. As I told you, the RAMP program is part of the RVTC, and we are getting ready to start our 4th cohort. We are scheduled to start in June. We have 6 new companies coming in. We have finished 21 companies that are actually doing surprisingly well, especially even in this condition. So we're going to continue to start in June and hope that throughout the summer we're going to start online. We hope that situation will change a little bit as we go forward in that. But there's a very strong tie between the technology community and our mentoring program and helping people move and give back to the community as a mentor, both as lead mentors and content expert mentors. So that's kind of some of the areas that we're working on right now. And I'm sure John could have covered more, but that'll give you a taste of what we're up to.
That's perfect. Thank you, Mary. And for those who don't know, my name is Nick Serfass. I'm the Executive Director at RVATECH, the Richmond Technology Council. And we're hosting these webinars, every day for different groups and for different kind of categories of tech companies in an effort to try to provide some value and some guidance or some help as we move through this whole, new normal together. And so as we kind of move through this discussion today with Dan, Mary, and Tracey, I'd love to get, some takeaways that you all have observed or seen that, have really, inspired you or, maybe are just great value adds for folks who are on the line today. And I'll start it off with one thing I've really been noticing is a lot of the tech companies in the area still are trying to figure out how to do business and keep things rolling. We all know there was a panic at the beginning, and then there was a kind of settling in, and we've got all the remote work going, and we've got the CARES Act going, but now it's still looking out and how do we keep doing business? And one of the interesting things I heard recently was that sales calls and the hard sell is really tough to do right now, but the current environment is a great opportunity to be empathetic and to share and build relationships and to reach out to people in a more caring, sympathetic mode and just check in on people. And it's a chance to build a warmer relationship and not make the hard sell all the time. And so that really struck me recently as, a way to kind of keep the gears running on your business, but also be respectful of the current environment. So with that said, I kind of want to do a little round robin and see what you all are seeing in your areas in terms of how companies are reacting and responding, whether it's internally or externally with biz dev or even just engaging the community. What are you all seeing broad brush in your areas? And maybe start with you, Dan, this time. And what does it look like in Hampton Roads from a company standpoint?
I'm sure that all of our perspectives are going to mirror some comments. And as you pointed out, Nick, I think the first thing people are trying to figure out is survival. How does our business move forward in this time? And a lot of that is driven from the business model, what is going on with customers and essentially the supply chain and how disruptive is that. I think that there's people are pulling out their old contracts with customers and looking at that force majeure clause and well, what does that mean? It's been in every contract forever, but now we're getting to a point where it actually might be enacted to change business conditions on either side of the table. So resilience planning is becoming a big deal, and so this happened to us. What happens in the future? Will it happen again? Probably likely that something will happen. So I think the first step is surviving, and everything you've mentioned and the others will mention in terms of remote and in some cases, unfortunately, furloughing, things of that nature, all part of survival moving forward. Then they seem to be looking at, well, what are we going to do? We have to be very, very close to our customers at that point in time. Now, I'm not speaking about externally. We have companies that are making face masks and all sorts of very wonderful things for the community. So that being said, I'm more focused on, well, what are they doing to keep their business moving forward? So resilience planning is becoming a big deal. Staying close to the customers to their customers is a really big deal. What's happening to the customer side? How are they reacting? What's the impact to the small tech company? And so, it's essentially that model that at least I'm hearing. I don't talk to all tech companies that are out there, but the ones that I have spoken with, certainly they're very interested in the CARES Act and all that. Sure, that's short term. That helps. Thank you very much. But what are we going to do to make sure that we're ready for the next one, whatever form that comes in? And so that's what I'm hearing.
How about you, Tracey? In Charlottesville, what are you seeing? Are there any themes popping up or interesting anecdotes that you're seeing around the area?
I'd say a big one is collaboration. So we had multiple cohorts of companies coming together to collaborate in different sectors. So we have a woman who makes 3D printed shoes called O Shoes, collaborating with a company named Icarus Technologies that makes medical knee braces. And then Nelson's and Brana from Metalum 3D, which is a 3D printing company, have all collaborated together, and they started one crowdfunding pitch campaign to all produce face masks and other forms of PPE. The other one is I've talked to a lot of companies and people who are in touch with companies about how they're doing things differently with their teams. And some of the things I'm hearing are it's a real concern for the employees in their workspace. They're really concerned about mental health. Investors, I also am the founding executive director of the Charlottesville Angel Network. We've invested about $10 million in over 40 companies in just about 6 years. 75% of those are based here in the Commonwealth. And we've encouraged our deal leads to reach out to their portfolio companies and see what they need and what they're hearing. And we are hearing a lot of mental health concerns. You know, how are people faring with this anxiety? People are not only anxious, but they're grieving. They're grieving their workforce and the person interaction that they used to have. They're grieving, some of them are grieving family and losses that they've had. So there's a lot of concern, and I'd say you're right, Nick, a lot of empathy right now. It's a time for people to be very compassionate. Having more communication with their direct reports is being recommended. And then in general, portfolio investors are reaching out to their portfolio companies to check in with the CEO to say, hey dude, how are you doing? Hey gal, you're not alone. I'm here, I'm a listening ear. What's going on? What can I do to support you? So people just knowing that they're not alone, that they have a lot of support, that, you know, yeah, it's really gonna be, it's painful now and it's gonna be painful for a while, but also, you know, things like I wrote a really practical advice article, and I pushed that out to all of our portfolio companies and our ecosystem here in Charlottesville about how do you reduce your burn rate, how do you extend your runway, and how do you find new forms of capital when you really need it, whether it's pivoting in some way with your revenue streams or whether it's continuing to do fundraising, you know, whatever that looks like. There is good news. CIT just put out some information today. They're still investing in companies. Since the pandemic alone, they've invested $725,000 in startups here in the Commonwealth. The Charlottesville Angel Network is another example. We are still looking at companies. We're still in due diligence with a number. We have a couple of deals getting ready to close. Applications are still open on our website, Charlottesville Angel Network. If you Google it, you'll get there. We're on the Gus.com platform. So companies from all across the Commonwealth and anywhere can actually apply. And we screen deals once a month, and we invite 3 companies in. We're doing all of our meetings now virtual, so via Zoom webinars. So I'd say become a Zoom expert. That's one tip. If you're fundraising, you're going to need to know how to do that online. There's so much more to say, but I'd really say collaboration is a big one. I think also tech councils, you know, there are 10 of us across the Commonwealth, maybe 11. Partnering with other organizations. We have a great organization in town called Seville BioHub. We have a huge sector of our tech community in biotech. So there are a lot of biotech things happening that are positive. People addressing specifically the pandemic and COVID-19, whether it's creating test kits or companies like Willow Tree, one of our local software web development companies, is helping UVA with data science. They're trying to decrease the amount of time it takes to get test results right now. So lots of collaborations.
Thanks, Tracey. Yeah, I agree. I'm seeing a lot of partnerships across the region as well. And I think that's one of the interesting things happening right now is that, you know, usually we're also head down kind of in our own, you know, business mindset, trying to grow our own businesses. And those partnerships aren't always the first thing that we want to spend our time on in a normal day-to-day world. But now I think it's a real opportunity to kind of extend our branches even farther and see who we can partner with and how we can, you know, develop some creative relationships for either the good of the community or even for, you know, business innovation. So I think you're dead on. We're seeing it here in Richmond too. Mary, how about Roanoke? What's it like down there?
Well, I have to appreciate all that has already been said in this collaboration and rethinking. I will share with you a program that we've been working with one of our companies, Cortex Leadership, has been doing and pushing out additional material. It's a great time to begin to learn about this new order of business. And I think we make a big mistake if we think that we can just keep on pushing at the same level while people are really burdened with all this other. And so we had a program the other day on how really to better listen to one another. And we're at a different pace right now, especially parents that are home with their children, that there are many of our employees are being responsible for homeschooling as well as the standard work engagement. And I think people are being asked right now, I think flexibility matters, but I love what Tracey said about collaboration. We're seeing that kind of collaboration as well. And we live in these areas where we've always been collaborators. So when people are collaborating again with my problem, and Dan pointed out, I think cash flow is king. I'm working with a lot of young companies that don't even know the right question to ask. So it's a really helpful situation in a comment like this when we talk about, I mean, the very first thing I did when this started hitting was reach out to all the companies I work with and say, I want you to get in touch with anybody you owe money to. I want you to get in touch with your banker. I want you to get in touch with this. I want them to know that you're working on this, and ask for the guidance that you need. Maybe they don't know, should we pay this bill or that bill, or what if we don't get that contract? And are they going to drop it? And can they drop it in the middle? Can they just drop it in the middle? And so there's a lot of unknowns that these young companies, and all companies, and this is where the Technology Council can connect somebody with a more senior level person to take a phone call, answer a question, and bring a lot of calmness to what's going on. But at the same time, among our companies, I sometimes ran with 30 employees. If I had sent all my employees home at the rapid pace that we did this time, we really have to rethink our work, our productivity, our sharing, and kind of pacing ourselves. In an office, you can see when John walks away from his desk and is burned out. And it's like, I need a break, guys. I just need a break. But you don't see that when we're all at this distance. And so I think, I know that Linda talked about the DISC assessment, and it was a kind of a fun time to do something new in your company, to acknowledge who you are and how you're working and how this could be affecting you. That we have to be, that's the elephant in the room. We cannot ignore it while we're trying to keep our companies moving at a reasonable pace in this unknown environment. And I'll leave you and give this back to you. She said, never forget that all the people you're dealing with, almost all of them are well-intended. Some of us are dealing more in email when we used to do it in person. Some of us are burned out on Zoom. Some of us are burned out on being on the phone all day long. And so we have to be aware that these are challenging times for other situations. But I will throw out, just yesterday, I had a couple of companies call me to tell me about big contracts that had gone through and in our region. And so that was kind of exciting to hear. Everything is not shut down. Good things are happening, maybe not at the pace that we want, but we just have to kind of keep picking up our feet and putting them down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary. There's a couple nuggets in there that I think are really valuable that I want to kind of come back to, and I want to transition a little bit to management. And a lot of the folks that are attending here today, manage teams or manage their entire businesses, and are really trying to figure out, good strategies moving forward in terms of effectively managing people. And both of you said, I think Mary and Tracey, you said a couple things that I want to come back to. The first one, Mary, was you mentioned, actually looking at the contracts and the bills and invoices that you have to be paid. We're all looking at our clients and our customers and saying, okay, how can we collect? But also, I think there's some business value to looking at which of those invoices, really need to get paid, and making sure that you're a team player, on the payment side as well. And I say that because what I found recently is that a lot of vendors and folks like that are really offering, a renewed opportunity for a relationship. There's additional value they're providing. They're really trying to bend over backwards. And I'm hoping that we all come out of this with maybe some tighter relationships with everyone we work with. And so I think that could be a real positive here. And I also want to mention, going back to I think Tracey, you mentioned mental health a little bit, and Mary, you touched on it. And the whole people aspect of this and the teams we're managing, I think there's a real opportunity right now to, if you can't figure out how to utilize your team, to maybe look at it in terms of repurposing people or giving them a chance to work on something they've never worked on before. Is there a professional development opportunity here to restructure a role? And maybe it's just temporarily, but at least experiment with some things and put some people in some new positions to try out new skills or new areas, and maybe even innovate for your business in ways you never thought possible, because now their typical day-to-day job is not available, or is different, or is put on hold. So there's a lot of, I think, opportunity here to really transition workforces into an innovative capacity. So I wanted to pass around the horn here and see, what other management strategies or tips or thoughts, whether it's remote work, whether it's just dealing with the, the emotions that, going on right now. What are you hearing or seeing out there in that area? And maybe Mary, pass it right back to you, because you kind of left us off there. What are you seeing out there?
Well, I will tell you that one of the things that Linda, who's an organizational specialist, shared the other day, and this is a real example. The other day, someone sent me, they sent me 8 emails between 6:05 in the morning and 7:55. And all of the emails, each individual of the 8 emails was requesting data. And it was kind of like, I just grabbed my coffee, got online. It was a bit overwhelming to me, and my day hadn't even started. And I shared this with this organizational specialist, and I just said, wow, people just think you're available all the time on. And she said, whoa, Mary, you also have to take the lead. And she said, it would have been appropriate for you to write this individual back and said, I see that you're an early worker and that you've sent me all these requests. I need to understand what your expectations are. Would you like me to answer them as I can? Do you expect me? Would you like to set priorities? It's okay for us to ask back, because I get the fact that people are getting as much done as they can and they're working at different levels. But I thought it was interesting that we need to engage or give our employees permission to say back to us, would you like this, or that? Would it be better if I sent you a text message when I need you? Or would you rather I reach out and give you a call? Or would you prefer that I write you one long email with all of my thoughts? All of these can be negotiated to be more effective, rather than just assuming that we're dumping things out there that have to happen. And so I think the mental health is really critical. I will share 3 things with you. They say there's 3 things that can help all of us. Number 1 is we must find a time to unplug at some point. We're not available 24/7. Number 2, we have to get some rest, and we have to eat properly. And it's really hard right now when people are so remote. Some of their situations have changed a great deal. And the 3rd thing is that makes us feel more well is when we give back to others, when we find something we can do. So as an employer, you can reach out to your people and say, what would you like to work on? I think we have to engage people in what they also would like to do. We have to give a little bit of space for that. And I think we've touched on that. We can build a better relationship, actually, and work with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mary. Tracey, move it over to you.
Yeah, so some of the things I'm hearing, one is non-essential yet essential lab workers, because of the need to be 6 feet apart from each other. They've broken out larger teams into smaller teams, so they're working shifts. So not everybody's day is 9 to 5 or 7 to 7. Some people are coming in the morning and then leaving in midday and taking naps and then coming back in the afternoon. So things are being broken up in different ways. So Team A and Team B, for example, they all used to work together, but now they need to kind of work in shifts. I've heard about people, some of our tech companies are hosting virtual dance parties with their employees to kind of keep morale up. We've got CEOs that are running all day long Zooms so that anybody can just drop in at any time and say hi to their colleagues. So it's just a constant 24/7. If whenever you're working, you can just jump online and see if anybody else is there to say, hey, I'm alone in my apartment. I've been alone in my apartment for 3 weeks and I want to see another face. I love the concept of repurposing people and people repurposing themselves. For example, restaurants in town, when the pandemic first started, some of the dishwashers were out of work, so they started washing cars, and there was a drive-through car wash. So finding different ways to utilize the resources and getting things done that need to be done. I talked to somebody yesterday. He has over 400 employees and in multiple countries. And one of the things he told me is 2 years ago, they did crisis management planning and they planned and prepared for this. And they were then able to just take that playbook off the shelf and say, here's what we're going to do. Here are the new buildings we're going to build. Here are the new projects we're going to undertake. Here are the new things that we're going to try, or, you know, shift people into different positions. And it's working. He called me last night and told me it's working. Again, reaching out more frequently to your own staff. I've heard people say it's really important not to just say, talk about work, but ask them about their family. Ask them how their wives and their spouses and their children are doing, and their parents, their siblings. Everybody's worried. There's a considerable amount of anxiety, and getting in touch with people on that real transparent level, in an empathetic way is really important. I think that this is bringing out the best in people in society. And we're also seeing a real increase in ingenuity, creativity, and inspiration. So people are really finding the best of the best. I'm finding really fantastic nuggets. I wanted to bake bread, but this woman on Slack, Seville has a Slack channel, and this woman on Slack was offering free sourdough starters, and she's just mailing them to people. So it really is people are being very generous. They are, as Mary said, looking for ways to contribute. And we're all, you know, we're ecosystem builders, the four of us, and we're out there working every day trying to solve problems and tell people how to reduce their burn rate, and guiding them to resources on the CARES Act and the PPP and the EIDL loans and so forth. We also need to take care of ourselves. I have a really fantastic board with CBIC, and they are constantly checking in on me and asking me how I'm doing. And there are times when I just have to say, in all honesty, I am overwhelmed. I'm trying to solve too many problems for too many people all at one time. And I need to remind myself to slow down. So my own mental health, you know, is important. We've talked about, you know, putting on your own oxygen mask before you help others. I think that really is important.
Thanks, Tracy. You mentioned a couple things that I wanted to highlight. You know, that open Zoom room, I heard one company call it a kitchen, and they just kept it open, you know, all day long, so anybody
Mm-hmm.
can flow in just like you would in your kitchen at the office,
Nice.
which I thought was kind of neat. And you also mentioned that, you know, some companies are just trying to do fun get-togethers or happy hours or dance parties. We're going to do our Tech on Tap, but with trivia this coming week, just to, you know, mix it up a little bit and make sure that that social thing has a little bit of a purpose and a structure.
Nick, I'm going to
Yeah.
offer you and everybody else on this call a resource that I've just stumbled across. It's a technology that I haven't seen anywhere else. It's called Kiko, and it's spelled Qiqo Chat. Kiko Chat, Qiqo Chat. And what it lets you do is it's a Zoom-based technology. So you can have one main meeting room where everybody comes in just like this in the gallery. And then you have a set of rooms that you've created over on the side, and you can create them by topic. You can create them by sponsor name. You can have people can type in their own topic and say, hey, come over to this room and chat with me about this. It'll close down one Zoom video and then open the next one almost seamlessly, just a couple of clicks. And then boom, you're in the other room. We did our Tech on Tap like that just this week. And we're doing our Charlottesville Entrepreneur and Espresso next week like that. So it's a great technology. It's also a startup company that started out of Charlottesville, and then he moved to New York about 3 years ago. So I'm really grateful that we can, you know, stay in touch in this day and age and revitalize the relationship we had with this startup company and help support them in a time when they're really helping support a lot of organizations.
You said it's Qiqo?
Mm-hmm. Chat, Qiqo Chat, CHAT.
Cool. Just putting that on the chat box for people to see if they want to reference that. Great, thanks, Tracy. That's a really great tactical thing for folks to check out. I'm gonna check it out myself.
Cool.
Dan, what are you thinking in terms of management? What are you seeing out there?
Well, I agree with everything I've heard, and I've seen those types of things in play. It's great. In fact, we probably, as HRIC, will move into a similar video deployment of our critical mass. And thanks for the lead, Tracy, and Kiko Chat. So I won't discuss things that have already been touched upon. Rather than that, just I think the importance of workflow management and back to managing the business of the business. It's in some cases, you know, companies were already there with virtual employees, software development, things of that nature, and so it was much easier for them. But where that situation doesn't exist, it's really a shift in direction for companies to learn how to map workforce or workflow differently, and manage the employee base. And literally, I have heard the comment, I am working so much harder now on making sure that my employees are productive. And I know that sounds horrible, but that's the reality of it. And many years ago, as I can tell you from my own experience, I literally was 100% virtual, and the senior leadership in the Boston area was just constantly writing the employees. What are you doing? Where are you? That type of thing. Now that's a horrible example. But the fact is that under current conditions, many organizations are not used to working as virtually as is required right now. And so it's a shift on workflow processing. It's a shift on employee management. And I think that one of the webinars that we have coming up is exactly on that topic. So everything else I heard from Mary and Tracey, 100% I agree with. There's still the business of the business, and there's got to be that balance of doing the right thing for the employees for retention while still trying to manage the business effectively.
Yeah. Sorry, Mary, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, I think that is really critical. We do care about the business of the business, but there are some strategies that I think are some best practices that might help a little. And one of those was really setting smaller goals or smaller task assignments, that the large ones are harder to track and identify. And so if as leadership can break apart smaller and more easy to check in on successes, some of these people are feeling totally overwhelmed and a little bit alone, and they just can't see the success that they need to feel like, okay, today really did matter. What did I get done? And I go back to a tool that I used for 30 years, and it was one of those 7-minute manager kind of things. But every Friday, every employee I ever had sent me a very short email, and if that 15-5, it should take you no more than 15 minutes to write it, me no more than 5 minutes to read it. But it was incredibly helpful, and it just was a quick list. What were your accomplishments this week? Where will your focus be next week? And do you have any specific questions for me? And I actually have gone back to that. I'm just saying it helps us all stay on the same page. And it also gave them a chance to say, these were my major accomplishments for the week, even if you didn't know that. I accomplished this, this, and this. A quick bullet list. So I want to think that some of the tools that really have always worked well could also work here and now in these shorter ways to call out the accomplishments that people are making, and a way to keep them focused in an agreeable, what is our focus for next week and what will we get done next week? So I just throw that back out. It worked for me for a long time.
Thanks, Mary. I love all these very specific tactical, approaches you guys are throwing out. I think it's really helpful to people to be able to take away, something really specific like that. Dan, I want to kind of come back to you, and as we kind of transition to Q&A here in a second, I forget if it was at the beginning of this or while we were talking beforehand, but we were talking a little bit about the future and how to position for what's after this or the new normal or whatever it might be. And I think it's interesting that, going back to the business of the business, there are some things coming out of this that companies are starting to look at, not just now while we're in this, the COVID issue, but could the things they're doing now be transferable or translatable afterward into a business product or service in some way? And I think, one of the easy or most apparent things is that, now we're all realizing more than ever that we're a media company in many ways. And when you can't get out and network or sell or demo, that you got to put out content. And that content is flooding the airwaves, whether it's webinars or virtual conferences or just social media, whatever it is. And I think what's interesting is now many of those companies are probably going to keep that going even after we're beyond this, and I think that's great. There's a chance for even more content and information and value to flow. But what are you all seeing or thinking or hearing in terms of the future and repositioning? Now that we're settling into this, and hopefully we're starting to see that one day, hopefully sooner than later, we will come out of it. what's next? What does that look like, or how do you position for that in, that unknown? And maybe start with you, Tracey.
That's a tougher one.
Yeah.
I'd say that technology that targets online consumer experiences, like we have one in Charlottesville called Scafos, I think that those sectors are really going to ride a big wave for a long time. I think that malls were dying already, and this just adds fuel to that fire of their death, and that we're going to see a new normal that is not everybody back in the office all again. I've heard many companies talk about their employees had been wanting to go work from home for a long time, and the companies weren't going to be supportive of a remote dispersed workforce, and then all of a sudden they were forced to. And for the first few weeks they didn't like it at all, and then all of a sudden they're like, whoa, this is kind of awesome. And I think it's going to have an impact on office space. I think that fewer, I've heard of a large tech company in Charlottesville that was going to expand in their footprint because they had more team members and teammates, and they needed to grow physically. They're now thinking that that's not the case. I think it's going to have an impact on real estate, class 1 office space. Maybe there won't be as much of a pinch or as much of a need. Biotech obviously is really, the pandemic has underscored the importance and the value of technology that you and I and all of us have always known. And it's going to become more and more evident how important investments in those sectors are, and supporting of those sectors. Our jobs are going to become even more vital and more important. I was on a call with the Startup Champion Network recently with a bunch of colleagues and folks like us, ecosystem builders. And we were underscoring the fact that, yes, we're out there and we're on the front line trying to support people who are suffering from this and having to pivot and figure out how to pivot, but we are also having to pivot. And it's just as important for us to do fundraising and for organizations to support the work that we do, because we're the ones that are going to help build up our ecosystems in the end. One thing that came up recently, and I wanted to address it, was My Tech on Tap. We usually do in a physical location, a favorite watering hole, right? And then we say, hey, start a bar tab, get some appetizers that are on discount, blah, blah, blah. And since we had to do it virtually, what I did was pivoted. So it was Tech on Tap with Ting, so our sponsor, and Tech on Tap with Ting and takeout. So I encouraged everybody who was going to be on the call to get their favorite takeout. And somebody asked me, why are we supporting local restaurants? We're a tech company. I'm a tech council. What's up with that? And my response was, the technology community needs, and the innovation-based communities all need great restaurants, great theaters, great places to go, great places to take your family. They need ambiance. They need a lifestyle, not just a job and a place to work. We all know that with the tech multiplier, for every one tech job that's formed in a community, it takes 3 to 4 and even upwards of 7, depending on your community, non-technology jobs. So what are those people? There are baristas. There are cutting our hair. There are our mental health therapists. They're the bar owner down the street. So they need us so much now, and we need them. So our co-working spaces that we can no longer go into, finding ways to support them. By maybe they've pivoted and they're doing takeout and delivery like mine is at Common House. Common House is in Charlottesville and coming to Richmond. They're doing a great thing. So I used the Kiko chat technology, and I branded it Common House. So it looked like we were in Common House. So all the rooms that we were in were pictures of the space to give a feel and a vibe that we were in their space, and then encourage people to get takeout from their space. So I know it was kind of long-winded, but I wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, thanks, Tracey. That was great. Moving over to Dan. Dan, what are you thinking about in terms of positioning for the future?
Well, I think that what we're going through right now is a pendulum shift and correction for the current conditions. I believe that although some of the corrections that were being made, many of them are going to be maintained, I think that the pendulum will shift back. I don't necessarily think it will shift back to what we started with. So I would tend to think that the current conditions are almost forcing, I should say, they are forcing reaction from our businesses to get through the worst of times. And then some of that will relax, just like the regular standards will relax. I think some of that business correction will relax, and the pendulum will find a new home. That new home setting will be a bit different than it is today, but I think I anticipate that it'll be a hybrid of what was and what currently is.
Thanks, Dan. Mary, do you want to wrap us up here?
I just want to say that clearly, I think one of the things that I will challenge all of us to do is to try our best to really assess how something is working. Because as Tracey said, some people, we may find situations that actually are better than what we thought was the normal. I don't think we want to go back to the old methodologies if we actually found something that worked better for us. So I believe in data, and I believe in asking the questions. So as we're going through what we're doing now, it's okay to ask ourselves, so how's this working? How's this working? And what was our takeaway on that? And so we want to keep all the things that worked really well, and we want to not forget, we don't want to just fall back. And I don't think we can fall back. I don't think we will fall back. When Los Angeles said there will be no events held until 2021 in Los Angeles, wow. I began to think about trade shows and things like that, and the large trade. I think Orlando is looking at some things similarly. So right away, we're not going to be able to fall back. We're going to come out of this hopefully stronger and smarter. We're going to all learn how to use some of the tools that we knew were out there. I'm looking into what Tracey threw out right away. This kind of sharing is critically important to me. I hope that a year from now, if we're all back working in a different way, that we don't forget the value of this kind of sharing. So there's some of these things we should continue no matter what our work environment is.
Yeah, Mary, I think that's a great point. You know, any of us who are running a business are constantly iterating day over day, right? We're taking the information that we learned from the previous day and applying it to the decisions we make the next day. And I think this is almost creating a sort of exponential jump in our iteration. Because when we all come back to this, you know, when I keep hearing the new normal, I'm not necessarily thinking about, whether we're all wearing masks or social distancing or what it's like at restaurants. I'm wondering, hey, how are we all thinking about our businesses differently now? What did we learn through this that we're now going to apply in a different way? And going back to what you said, Tracey, about real estate, I think you're dead on. I think, a lot of us are now rethinking corporate office space and how that works. And so the new normal may just be a new mentality in many ways. And hopefully, Mary, like you said, it's a smarter mentality. We're all evolved because of it, hopefully. Well, we have only a few minutes left. And first of all, I just want to say thanks to the panelists. There have been some great tips here, a lot of very tactical things that hopefully folks can take and use right away. But I did want to get to a couple Q&A things. Michael Boitnott, Michael, if I can turn you on here. And I know you had a kind of a question about, there you are, Michael, about mentors.
Hey, Nick, could everybody turn their video on but keep themselves on mute? I'd love to see faces.
Sure.
Hi, guys.
I see Kim. Hey, Kim.
I see Desiree.
Michael, go ahead.
Hey, I think it was Mary, I believe, or I think somebody was talking about they had a mentor program, and I just wanted to see if you could follow up on that. It sounded like a very interesting idea to have in your local area. It was Mary. Mary was talking about it. She had a mentor program.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I built a mentor program to go with our accelerator program, which is not unusual for accelerators. But what we've always known is that mentors make a huge difference in the success of a business. And you shouldn't have to find a mentor because you were lucky enough to sit next to somebody at a breakfast, or you happen to run into them at a Tech on Tap. And so we're moving our mentor program available to everyone within our technology council so that we can pair you up with a mentor, a senior level person who might want to meet with you on a monthly basis or a weekly basis and track along with you for a while. Or you may want specific content. You may need help with your budgeting. You may need help with your cash flow. You may need help with your HR. And so we're looking at who would be a great HR mentor to come in and just help you assess where you are and what your problems are. And that is under our program, but we're growing that program right now. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah.
That was really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah. I don't see any other Q&A in the chat, but anybody want to jump in and ask anything for our panelists? We have about 5 minutes left.
I have a question for, I think, for all of you guys, if that's okay. So something that we're struggling with or thinking through at Max is we were really doubling down on a buy local strategy. So like really getting in deep with the local. But now that we're having like, and as someone who for years and years has always kind of just studied the balance between globalization and localization, now that we're able to connect as a state as easily as this call, or, you know, like, do you see more opportunities for more collaboration for us as a region or as a Commonwealth? Do you think that this local becomes more important? Like I'm watching, it's really interesting because we're all able to do much larger global things, but if anything, I just bought lunch from, you know, our local restaurants because I'm trying to save them too. So I think it's like, there's this interesting dynamic going on and where it's going to land in the new normal. I don't have an answer. I'm just curious where you guys' thoughts are on that. Like, does it change? Like, Tracey, should we be thinking from, you know, Richmond and Hampton Roads, whether or not I promote that opportunity to our employees that might be in Norfolk or something like that? Like, are there more opportunities for us to get more engaged with each other?
Yeah. Where are you based, Kimberly?
I'm not telling anybody where I'm located. So somewhere, it used to be on Route 64, but no, I so our offices are in Norfolk and Richmond. Got it.
Yeah, I noticed that there's a big buy local push here. Absolutely. Less and less Amazon purchases, more and more trying to support the mom and pops and the restaurants and all of that. I talked to a very large employer yesterday who emphasized to me that they don't, that they only buy stateside. And I think more and more people are going to have that mindset and that mentality that the jobs need to stay local and be local as much as feasible. In terms of collaboration, yeah, I think this opens us up wide. Tech councils have always collaborated with one another over the 20 plus years we've been around as tech councils. I've been around with CBIC for 20 years now, 9 as executive director and as a volunteer and past chairman of the board before that. And the angel groups and investment community is also coming together, not just in the Commonwealth, but in the Southeast. And as we become more and more familiar with technology and we're more willing to get on a Zoom call and use Slack and the things that some of us may have been a little bit more hesitant towards, this has forced our hand. And in doing so, I think it's really opened up our minds to how easy it actually is. And then just that need of, we can't all do everything. I can't do every webinar on every topic I want to do. And I'm so thankful that Nick coordinated this one because all I had to do was pop on and do a little research on my locality. But then, you know, I took the effort to host the one on the CARES Act with SBDC. And then I pulled in the Chamber of Commerce and threw their logo on it and said, I'm going to give you a ready-made file and all you have to do is push this out to your members. So ways that we can help support each other and stay in our swim lanes, but collaborate is definitely going to be key.
Dan or Mary, anything to add? Yeah. You know,
let me just add, it depends. It's as simple as that to me. You know, I don't think there's any doubt about local restaurant sector, et cetera, of course. But when we talk to our technology companies, big companies, the CIOs, et cetera, they may not necessarily just buy local. With local, I mean, that's what we're trying to solve with respect to our our corporate/regional pillars meetings, et cetera. We want them to meet. A lot of these organizations are not necessarily corporate headquarters. They're regional presence of large organizations. We only have a few exceptions in Hampton Roads. So it's not necessarily as important for them to buy local as it is to find the best solution for them. What we're trying to do is create the maximum amount of exposure to our local organizations so that they can create those relationships and get business from them. So I think that the answer is it depends. It depends on what they're the solutions that they're trying to achieve.
I think there's an interesting tangential topic here too, in terms of now that the Zoom platforms and the virtual platforms are so much more well accepted, that there's a chance for biz dev anywhere you want to biz dev. I mean, if you want to hop on a webinar in St. Louis, you can. And as this becomes our source of networking for the at least the near term, really maybe there's a chance to even expand your business by using this platform across the country, whereas before you couldn't attend a Tech on Tap in St. Louis if you wanted to. So tangential,
that's exactly
but
the question. It's kind of like we've been a member of RVTC for 2 years now because we're hoping to be able to do business Southwest Virginia at some point, but when it comes to the events or the Tech on Taps, it's like that 4-hour drive is prohibitive, and now it's not. So I don't know. It's just one of those where does this accelerate kind of all of us working together faster? I hope that there's opportunities.
Yeah, that's a good question, Kim. Thanks for ending us on that one. I like to get everyone out of here at 1 o'clock. I know everybody has work to get back to. So I want to thank everyone for joining us, and particularly the panelists, Dan, Mary, and Tracy. Thanks so much for your time. We will record this and archive it on our website, so you can share it there if you want. And hopefully we'll see you next time on T.I.Y. Take it yourself. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for hosting, Nick. Bye, everybody. Keep smiling.